everybody. Welcome once again to the Road to the ProcureTech Cup, the show that's all about showing procurement professionals the art of the possible with procurement technology. So thanks for being here. Today we're joined by Fairmarkit, a sourcing tool solution provider who's going to educate us on how to make sourcing tools work and fit into our existing systems, our existing landscapes, with your IT teams, making the best use of it, because we know that can get complex real quickly, especially in larger organizations. So I'm very excited for this episode. But before we dive into the content, let me just put up the calendar here so you know where we're at on the journey to the ProcureTech Cup. Last week, I should say, we had Kielvar come educate us on how to build a business case for sourcing tools. And this week we have Fairmarkit, again in the sourcing category, but talking about architecture. Where do we fit sourcing tools into your existing landscape? And then next week we're going to be joined by ConversionIS on source to pay suites and end-to-end procurement platforms. And as you can see, we have a whole host of content for you all the way to next April across a bunch of solution categories in the ProcureTech space. And it'll all culminate with the ProcureTech Cup Finals virtual conference. And I will give you news in the weeks to come on how you can get tickets if you'd like to attend this private conference, where it's all about, same thing as the show, educating you on the art of the possible. And you can ask your questions about your specific context, which is really the goal at the end of the day, right? To get you comfortable with how you should use ProcureTech in your own business. Before we welcome our guests here, just a quick agenda. So we'll touch on what's a sourcing tool again real quick. We did that last week as well, but I want to make sure we're on solid basis before going into the conversation. We'll get Fairmarkit solution category champ a minute to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into the meat of the session here around how to use sourcing tools with your current systems. I'll cover a general approach that you can use, and then we'll cover the top scenarios where you have either an enterprise resource planning system, nothing else, you got a source to pay suite, you've got intake and orchestration, and or you're a very complex organization that has a combination of all of those. You'll be well served with this session. And then we'll wrap it up and give you a couple action items, a couple assets that you can use. And that'll be it for today. So let me just bring our guests here, Tommaso and John from Fairmarkit. Thanks so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And I think we'll dive straight into the content because it's action-packed today. So what's a sourcing tool? First thing here, as seen through the lens of the Pure Procurement ProcureTech market map. I did not mean to make a tongue twister, but I ended up doing that with this. But it's worth it, I promise, right? So we're talking about sourcing, everything that happens after you analyze your spend, after you have your forecasts, your demand management come in, and you're looking at your category strategies from different types of spend that you're buying in your company. Then you need to execute on that strategy with sourcing processes, right? And so the sourcing tool is an application that can help you facilitate those processes, scale them up so that you're doing them, for everything you want to be doing them for, and getting the results that go along with it. And then that feeds into the rest of the process around managing contracts, managing repeat buying and replenishment with procure to pay and accounts payable. And then at the bottom, we've got intake and process orchestration and supplier relationship management. We will also kind of dip into intake a little bit with Fairmarkit's solution, and you'll see why that makes sense in the context of sourcing. I just want to level set before we go into the content. If you want to grab a copy of this market map, you can do so with the QR code at the top right-hand side here. All right, so John, that's enough for me, enough talking on my end. I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and Fairmarkit at the same time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is John Fleischer. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer here at Fairmarkit. I've been with the company a little over 2 years. Super excited to be here today and share a little bit more about Fairmarkit. So to briefly set the stage, Fairmarkit is a venture-backed and award-winning company headquartered out of Boston, Massachusetts. We have employees and customers all around the globe. We're fortunate to have been awarded a number of accolades for our technology and growth trajectory, which has continued to accelerate here in 2025. And you can see from the slide, we partner with some of the largest and most recognizable organizations in the world, ranging across industries and regions, supporting them really as they modernize their procurement processes with agentic and AI native solutions like Fairmarkit. So we'll expand on this more today, but we really are agnostic. So if you do sourcing and want to be more efficient or drive more savings, we can help you. But our typical customer is a larger enterprise company with a meaningful number of events and annual spend, mature processes, a team that maybe never quite seems big enough to get to everything. But it's an awesome shift that's happening in the world of procurement right now. And we're thrilled to be at the center of it, given our wide range of ideal customers and use cases. Next slide, please. Great. So to expand on what we do and who we help, this is a slide that captures a solid picture of our value proposition. While many folks know us as the tail spend solution, we've innovated a ton in the last few years, and our pace of innovation continues to be a full sprint, frankly. But we do so much more than tail spend sourcing now. We truly are an intake to award platform today with a unified approach for best-in-class, both tactical and strategic sourcing capabilities. So you'll see on the left RFQ or RFP and reverse auction on the right. So on the left-hand side for our tactical or RFQ sourcing, we use agentic and native AI technology to autonomously run competitive sourcing for those high-volume, low-cost purchase events, which, of course, by doing so, drives significant cost savings out of a segment that's frequently unmanaged or untouched. And even better, we have many customers that run tens of thousands of events without any human intervention. So you can do all of this without needing to add headcount to your team. Our customers really do see massive gains in both efficiency and savings by leveraging our technology. On the right, on the strategic side, it's more of a story of collaboration and communication, making running an RFP organized and, dare I say, delightful. These are larger, more considered purchases that we can intuitively, with our technology, help shape and manage with a larger group of influencers and decision makers. Not seen here, but our intake product, we also make working with procurement easy, and Tommaso will expand on this here in a moment. But it's helping the business to create a quick PR for indirect goods, or helping them craft and develop a scope of work for professional services to put out to RFP. Just really creating a single place or a front door for business requesters to engage with the procurement team. So as you can hopefully tell, everything we do is designed to augment your current team, enhance and modernize your current processes. And the best part is we're agnostic. So getting started with us doesn't require any additional investment elsewhere in your architecture. Next slide. And that's what this slide is built to represent. So we don't care how you want to capture demand from your requesters. You can use our intake. You can have them continue to do it in your P2P. You can do it via an orchestration tool like an Oro. But once we receive it, we will run the sourcing event, again, tactical or strategic, autonomously or with moments of humans in the loop to make the award decision. And then once that award is made, we can push it back into your P2P or orchestration tool to run the purchasing process, release POs, onboard suppliers, whatever it may be. So as sort of an anecdote, I was just at DPW all week last week. And this slide right here was really kind of the major theme or topic of discussion during the week. Do I keep my P2P? Do I flip to an orchestration tool? How do I work with Fairmarkit depending on that decision? And the simplest answer is that it doesn't really matter. We simply don't care. We can work with any stack. We can work with you via named integrations for the more common P2Ps, public APIs for the less common ones. But really the spirit here is that we see all sorts of different landscapes and setups. And that's what we want to highlight and talk a bit more about today, is determining how sourcing tools should fit into your business, whatever that setup may be. So with that, I want to hand it over to our principal solution consultant, the very best in the business, Tommaso Cecchini. Over to you.
And just before you hop in, Tommaso, I just want to highlight here that folks who want to grab a private demo can do that. We covered demos last year on the show. Right now, we're getting into more of the weeds. And John, that slide and what you said is exactly why you're a perfect fit for this specific episode about how to fit it in. So if you want to grab a demo, do that. And then we've got a question as well from Jigar. Can I have a recording? It's all on YouTube on the Pure Procurement newsletter channel, so you could grab it there. And on that note, just before we get to Tommaso, because I know we're aching to do that, I wanted to give you just a general approach, right? So how should you think about connecting sourcing tools into your current systems? And really easily, right? We've got thinking about your inputs, your process, and your outputs, right? So where are your inputs coming from? Your vendors, your materials, the users, the commodity codes and business units, people, the master data that you need to source today. Where is it housed? Transactions, right? Are people starting things with a web form, with forecast, with a requisition? Where's that demand coming from and in which form? And then what is your process today, if you have one, right? To the extent that you have one, around category strategies, running different event types like RFIs, RFPs, RFQs, and when you run those and why, and bring it what you have to the table, right? You may not have this defined for everything, and that's not an issue, but knowing what you have is already a good start. And then outputs, right? And I think this kind of mirrors the slide that John was just showing us, right? Where are you sending this data? Is it pricing records for direct materials? Is it updates to a requisition or creation of a purchase order for indirect materials? Are you sending analytics data on savings achieved or cycle time metrics to a Power BI, for example, right? So just having an idea of where sourcing needs to fit in from a simple process standpoint and the data, both master data and transactional data standpoint, is a great starting point to having a purposeful conversation with a vendor like Fairmarkit. And the other piece is not leading with tech, right? What is the business problem you're trying to solve? Is it cycle time? Is it savings? Is it stakeholder experience? Is it a bit of all of that? Is it in the intake? Is it in the actual cycle time of running the events? Is it supplier interaction? So being well-versed in where your pain is also another great thing to do as you're going into these conversations. And on that note, I'll head it over to Tommaso, and just by saying, right, this may seem like a lot, but you can start at any level of maturity that you currently are, and you can start using it today without any interfaces or data pumped into it, right? And then work yourself up from there. I always say, like, 1% better every day is 37 times better in a year than you are today, right? So think of it that way. It's the best way to make something transformational instead of waiting to have all this perfect data. All right, Tommaso, I've spoken long enough, so let's let you lead us off into this discussion here.
Thank you, Joel. Nice to meet everybody. I'm Tommaso Sassini, Principal Solutions Consultant here at Fairmarkit. I've been with the organization just over 3 years, and I'm thrilled to be part of the conversation. So we'll be using the slide to talk about the different scenarios where Fairmarkit can add value to an organization depending on their current IT and system landscape. As you see on the left side of the screen, as John hinted at, Fairmarkit deals with everything that happens before a sourcing event. You can only really have a quality sourcing event if the data you're capturing from the stakeholders is of quality. So anything that deals with capturing the demand, enriching it, perhaps building scope of works associated to services requests, routing it to the correct individuals. And then on the right side of the screen is where we get to business, right? So we execute that sourcing event to the level of automation that it makes sense for the type of purchase, for the type of organization that we're speaking to. We have capabilities for autonomously negotiating with suppliers. And most importantly, as I know we've mentioned a couple of times, we're going to keep mentioning that, we're very integration agnostic, right? So we don't really care what kind of system data is coming from and what kind of system it should go to. To Joel's point, don't lead with technology, lead with the problem that we're trying to solve. That's my entire day job. So if we go into the first of the scenarios, Joel, let's pick the simpler examples, right? So the simplest possible setup where pretty much every organization has at least an ERP in place. Let's assume that's the only thing they have. How Fairmarkit can integrate in a solution like that and bring value to it? Well, a few considerations. Usually when an organization only has an ERP in place, we're dealing with procurement and sourcing processes that may be relatively basic. The question might actually be, is sourcing being done at all today? If it isn't, Fairmarkit can help as a stepping stone with its applicability, with its ease of use, to start doing sourcing in the areas where it might make the most sense. If there is an element of sourcing, if there is an element of purchasing being done, you see up top there's different types of transactions that obviously can be generated in ERP from a PR perspective, from an MRP perspective. MRP, machine generated demand specifically, is a fantastic candidate for autonomous sourcing. The data is very structured, it's very unequivocal, and it can be routed through a human touchless approach where effectively gets pushed into Fairmarkit, gets executed. That data then gets pushed back into the ERP. We automatically update the info records. We automatically update the PR if we started with a PR. So even in a situation where the processes could be very basic, ERPs are not known for their sophisticated sourcing capabilities, Fairmarkit can bring a lot of value to the game, right? I want to be mindful about the fact that our intake is something we're very proud of, right? And a very user-friendly and bleeding edge type of solution. In a setup like this, it could work as a fantastic benefit. We should also be mindful that it may feel as a little bit of a science fiction for an organization that doesn't have their ducks in a row from a sourcing perspective. So we need to weigh whether it makes sense for intake to be offered as part of that initial setup.
Yeah, good point to highlight, right? Like that purple line, when we map it, when I circled sourcing in my line, it's really what's on the right-hand side, right? And intake is that piece where we're going, well, if we're capturing intake for sourcing projects today manually or with emails or with a form, like why not do it in a structured way that's integrated with the tool, right? So I think it's important just to call out those two sides and how they interact together. But I agree, right? The sci-fi piece, like having seen your Kit chat experience, right? It feels like, it sometimes feels like, like the first time you use Chat GPT, for example, right? So I appreciate you calling that out. And I'll take the opportunity to bring a question from the chat here. Rusty was asking, and I think this is a great one for the ERP scenario. Is material creation an output? My system has a large amount of spot buys where a planner gets quotes for materials from a vendor, then creates a requisition instead of using a material number from a BOM.
It could be. So depending on how we structure that setup, that could be the output where we go back into the system and actually create that material master. We'd love the opportunity to take that conversation a little bit further because it's a very detailed question that requires a little bit more of a deep dive.
Yeah, and I would add to what you're saying, like it depends what type of material. Do you need engineering looped in? Like what's the master data governance process that you have before you're able to create materials? Because then to your point, they need to be added to the BOM. So, right, and we could probably do a whole show just on that specific question, right, Tommaso?
It might be very niche, but yeah, we could, yeah.
And Rusty, I don't know when you joined, but there's a QR code earlier in the show if you watch the replay where you can get in touch with Tommaso and the team.
Cool. All right. Different setup. Organizations that have already deployed a source-to-pay suite of sorts, whether that's a Coupa, that's an Ariba, Jagger, whatever the case might be. Now, we're dealing with a different type of organization usually. We're dealing with organizations that, to an extent, will have more mature source-to-pay processes. They'll have policies in place. The question will be less so as to whether or not sourcing is being done and more like, how much sourcing are you doing? What kind of quality of sourcing are you doing? How much time and effort are you spending executing your sourcing events? Are you getting to every category that you're planning on sourcing? And so this is where we can start figuring out the benefits that Fairmarkit can bring to the solution if there are opportunities for us to augment that process. So again, referencing some of the yellow lines at the top, the more commoditized spend that already goes through the S2P suite, fantastic. We can intake that automatically skip our intake process, right? The intake has already been done by the human in that case, route it through our sourcing engine, push that back into the S2P suite with the negotiated rates and information that we've got from suppliers. The intake in this case can actually help as an enabler for implementing and actually getting benefit out of all of those investments that an organization that has deployed an S2P suite has made in terms of defining policies, in terms of putting systems in place. There's a lot of organizations that have spent a lot of hours, a lot of months and education in terms of defining those policies, but somehow stuff falls through the cracks, right? And users go outside of those policies. So our intake is a fantastic tool to actually provide the level of sophisticated guidance and effectively seamless integration with the organization's policies, making that a no-brainer for the end user. An important thing to keep in mind when we're dealing with an S2P or deployment organization is that do they have a best of breed or a single suite type of mentality? Because in many cases, we may be dealing with organizations where if you suggest, hey, we can layer Fairmarkit or any other sourcing solution for that matter on top of your existing IT stack, that could be equated to calling their baby ugly. Do you mean that my suite cannot do everything that it's meant to be doing, right? So we need to be mindful of how that process benefit is being proposed and talked about. But that's certainly a different approach from an organization that only has an ERP deployed.
Absolutely. And would you say, Tommaso, like source to pay suites are more present in like businesses where they buy more indirect materials, right? So like services, catalog items, etc. They're less on the MRP side, so they're able potentially to put all of their purchasing in the source to pay suite.
Tends to be the case for sure. And as a matter of fact, I should mention from an S2P perspective, Fairmarkit does partner with some of the largest S2P providers on the market. So those providers themselves understand the benefit that the marriage of the two solutions brings to the game. So, and that's what we try to message to our prospects and our customers, of course.
And I loved you mentioning, like, you know, if you've already implemented a suite, that means you've like done a business case, you know, you've gone through the implementation project, etc. And so, you know, it could be a touchy conversation to say, hey, we need to augment the suite now,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
But I think, you know, if you want to have a good business, like technology evolves over 5, 10, 15 years, and these suites have been around for a long time. And there are certain value levers where you're going to want to go deep, right? And sourcing maybe one of them in your business type, right? Depending on your spend profile. So I think having those conversations as early as possible with stakeholders in IT and in executive positions that may not understand all the nuances of procurement, but it is important because sooner or later you're going to need to do that, and or maybe migrate away from a suite into another type of tool, or the suites have been coming out with their own intake modules as well, right? So you might have to, you know, eventually go and lobby for a new module. So I think we have this like static view of transformation as like, I'm ugly, I go get my transformation, now I'm pretty, it's over, right? But it's a continuous cycle of like, you need to brush your teeth every day, right? And so to get to where you want to go. So I appreciate you calling that out to Tommaso.
Beautiful. All right, different setup. Whenever an orchestration platform is in place, again, different approach. First and foremost, it's important to understand, and many organizations have already understood that deeply, of course, orchestration and intake, not the same thing, right? Orchestration by nature needs to be very broad, very system diverse, agnostic. That's what it's supposed to be doing. Intake is, or at least should be, very process specific, very purpose built, if it is meant to add value to what it's built for. So there's overlaps between the two, of course, but they essentially do different things, and that's why they can very well coexist. We've got a lot of success stories of integrating with existing orchestration platforms because, again, Fairmarkit offers that integration flexibility, that system agnostic approach. We also usually deal with organizations that instead of a single suite approach, they will have more of a best of breed type of approach, right? They've already deployed that orchestration solution. They get that the right tool is meant for the right purpose. And so there's usually less resistance in that aspect. And obviously, the type of data, and I've kept it voluntarily generic in that slide, the kind of data that we input and the kind of data that we output is really dependent on the type of process that we're supporting. Again, I go back to Joel's point. We don't open with technology. We open with the kind of processes and problems that we're trying to solve. So that data could take different shapes and different formats depending on what part of the process we're trying to influence with each. Okay. And finally, the behemoth, right? Those organizations that are complex and large in nature, they're deployed across multiple geographies, multiple systems, diverse systems, multiple copies of the same systems that do same or different things. Now, obviously, whenever we're dealing with a software implementation of any sort, data should be top of mind. In a situation like this, data is of majestic importance, if you will, right? So when you think about the fact that Fairmarkit can use a variety of different data points to do its thing, when we're dealing with an organization like this one, things like risk data, financial data, transactional data, even master data can take very different formats, very different quality levels. It may not be present in all of the different business units and all of the different systems. There may be duplication. So we want to get very well ahead of the game when we're dealing with an organization of this size and complexity. Technology, again, in this case, tends to operate as an enabler for standardization. And when I mean standardization, I don't mean equalizing your policies across the board. For an organization of this size, most times this is not feasible or even not desirable. They don't want to equalize. They want, however, that same level of compliance with those policies that they worked so hard to put in place. And a layer like Fairmarkit can actually help achieve that, right? So again, I've voluntarily kept all of that demand intercept and data pushback as generic as I possibly can. It's not for lack of trying, it's because the processes that we can support are so diverse. We can provide input into contract lifecycle management activities for some systems, whereas in other cases, we could go straight to PO. So there's a lot of varieties and a lot of different complexities to be considered. Obviously, in a setup like this, Fairmarkit has a long history of successfully supporting organizations of this size and complexity.
And I feel like the one use case that pops to mind when you show this slide is like a business that's growing by M&A or mergers and acquisition, right? Where
exactly,
you're going to buy another business, they're already on their ERP or their system, or maybe they have a source to pay suite or a bond system, or they're on AS400, and you've got this whole variety of systems in the back end for purchasing, but you want to have a consolidated view of demand and or being able to go out to market with consolidated demand, right? And so I find like this, using a Fairmarkit or a sourcing tool like this as an aggregator solution, not just to ensure you're respecting policy, as you mentioned it, but you're also aggregating that demand, getting a holistic picture, and being able to go to market with that holistic picture, and then pushing it back to all the various systems in the back end for all the data that they need to make it work in their specific context. It can be transformational in terms of the value you can generate in that context, right?
Exactly right.
Cool. So I think that covers pretty much everything we wanted to touch on during the show. So just as a quick recap, I gave you a general approach, right, of documenting your inputs, your process, your outputs at the level of maturity that they are today, right? You might have big gaps in your category strategy, and that's fine, right? But it's just identifying what you have, where stuff comes from, where it needs to go in the end, and what you're doing to it in the meantime from a sourcing standpoint. And if you've got a good picture of that, then you're ready to have a discussion around, the business problems that you're looking to fix or solve or optimize for benefit. Then you can design a target according to your reality, according to that context, right? This is the strategy and the business objectives that you're looking to achieve, and what's the technical constraints of ERPs, suites, intake and orchestration platforms, or as that last slide mentioned, a combination of them, and then how are you going to fit sourcing into that reality, and then how do we scale that back and start small with that end in mind, so you don't need to put the whole implementation on your shoulder before you start implementing and going live and generating value. You can carve out a small piece and say, hey, let's get one team, one category, start using this, right? And based on the lessons learned, ramp up the usage and deploy it across categories and across geographies and systems, right? So I think if I leave you with one slide, it should be this one. And I want to thank the Fairmarkit team for coming on the show. On the left-hand side here, if you want to keep following the season all the way to the conference in April, potentially get yourself a ticket to attend. There's no travel involved, so everything's going to be virtual, which is part of the value proposition. You can scan the QR code on the left-hand side here. You'll get the updates as well as my newsletter every Sunday night. And then on the right-hand side, Fairmarkit shared an asset with us, which I found was a great educational piece on agentic AI. Not the topic of this call. We actually did a Fairmarkit webinar earlier this week on that very topic. But any questions you have on agentic AI, I know definitions are important, and that you may have been too afraid to ask. On the right-hand side, that QR code will let you download that asset. And I thought it was great, so that wanted to share it at the end of the show here as another conversation starter. So that being said, Tommaso, John, a big thank you for coming on and for sharing your knowledge with everybody on the show here in the audience. And we'll see you again soon for some other sourcing tool knowledge and wisdom in the weeks to come. So look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, good to see you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.